A cold email campaign can get you replies and still do almost nothing. That sounds wrong because replies feel like proof. Someone reads it, someone answers, something must be working. But if the point of the campaign was to get business buyers to actually do something, to buy, subscribe, book, start a trial, or place their first orders, then replies are never the result. They are a signal on the way to the result. Those are two different things. And mixing them up is one of the easiest ways to run outbounds for months, stay positive the whole time, and still not know whether any of it is working. So that's what this video is about. How we separate the signal from the outcome. Why that separation matters more than it sounds, and the one sentence we try to write down before any campaign goes live. So a quick map so you know where this is going. First, why replies feel like proof and what they actually tell you. Second, the one online action worth judging a campaign on. Third, when you are allowed to read the results. Fourth, why you should not contact everyone. And fifth, how a blended number hides the entire lesson. And lastly, what replies are genuinely good for, plus a short checklist that you can use. Okay, I didn't scroll through far enough, but let's go over this. Why we all end up watching the activity. Let's start with that, because it's not just carelessness. There are three real reasons. The first is that activity metrics are simply easy to see. Opens, clicks, replies, positive replies, and booked calls, they are in the sending tool by default. Nobody has to build anything. You log it and they're there. The second is speed. Activity arises within days. The action you actually care about might take weeks. So there's a window early in every campaign where activity is the only thing that exists, and people make decisions in that window because waiting feels super passive. The third is emotional, and I think it's maybe the strongest one. As an agency, like if someone is paying for a campaign, or when you have your own budget, you want to see evidence that the thing is live. A reply is evident that something is actually alive, that something is happening. It's truly reassuring, and that's exactly why it's easy to overtrust. Now, to clarify, none of this makes activity metrics wrong. They are real numbers describing real events. They are just the upstream thing of the actual thing you wanted. Here's the failure mode. A campaign can be busy and still not answer any business questions. You can have a completely filled inbox and still have no idea if the campaign actually moved business. Or you can have the exact reverse, which is even worse. You have nothing happening in the inbox, but on the business side, actually stuff is moving. And sometimes that kills a campaign in weeks while it's perfectly performing. The activity, like reply rates and positive reply rates, tells you that the machine is running. It shows you, okay, we're moving, the train is going. It's not telling you if we're actually going in the right direction, if we're actually achieving something. That's a separate metric which is not shown in the sequencer. So if not activity, then what? What is it then? Well, before you look at any metrics, name the online action you want people to take. Not the category, the specific action. Depending on the business, that's usually one of these. It's a purchase, a subscription, booking, request, license, trial sign up, usage starts, first order. That's what it usually is when it comes to online converting. Now, three things about that list. First, pick one, not three, one. It's important to just do one because that helps to actually do clear testing. So we want one. Second, check that it is actually recorded somewhere you trust. Use your store, your billing system, your booking tool, your product, and I mean recorded today. Not we could probably pull that over time, actively live recorded today. So if the action is not captured, then that's the first thing to do before launching the campaign in the first place. Though I realize that's not necessarily the most exciting answer, but it's a very important part. Because sending emails for a setup that cannot measure the outcome doesn't work. It's like running Facebook ads without installing your pixel, knowing what Meta is doing. You don't want to do that. You install the pixel first, then you launch. And then the third thing, check if you can tie it back to the action, meaning that if you can tie the account you engaged with back to an action on the website. In most cases, when it comes to outbound, you can't do that perfectly, like 100%, but you can get close enough. And this third one is actually where most of the real work hides. So let me be concrete about what usually goes wrong. Usually what we see in practice is that the account you reached out to and the account that converted are often not the same person. In a lot of these cases, we reach out to an info at email address and then person at same company converts a few days later. Or for whatever reason, you reach out to a specific employee and the owner of the company converts on the website. Or if you do it based on company name, the company name that you reached out to isn't the same as they checked out with, since they have a different legal entity name or whatever. And don't get me wrong, none of this is like a massive unsolvable thing. This is very easy to solve. But there's also a clear reason why I push on this. Because if nobody defines what the action is up front, everyone brings their own definition of whether this worked or not. Sales will talk about meetings or replies, marketing will talk about meetings, and finance asked if it actually did any revenue. From their role specifically, everyone is right, and the campaign gets judged on whoever looks at it. Kind of like art is in the eye of the beholder. Like, it doesn't work that way when it comes to practical business stuff. So naming the exact action we're trying to get a result from before starting is what makes sure that that conversation is clear and directional. So then the next thing is to decide when you actually read the result. Because the action you defined has a natural timeline, and it's almost never the same as the campaign's timeline. Sending finishes, but buying has not finished, or sending starts while buying takes a few weeks before it actually starts. Some actions happen fast, some take significantly longer. And well, some actions happen fast. A trial sign up, first small order can land in the same week or 2-3 weeks from now. Others sit inside a considerable window, especially when there's a buyer that needs internal sign-off or a budget cycle. Or maybe even they currently have a supplier they need to unwind or whatever. Like, it's different for every business. So that's kind of the trap, and it's a subtle one. If you read the results too early, you will systematically underestimate the campaign. Everything looks weak because most of the outcome has not happened yet. And the fix we see most people reach for at that moment is usually rewriting the copy, which is a change to the one thing that may not have been the problem. If you read it too late, you'll have stalled the decision you could have made way sooner and improved the campaign overall. And the way we handle this internally is not some clever, weird way you figure out with a coding tool like Codex or Cloud Code. No, it's super simple. You write down the reading date before you launch. Based on what we're monitoring, and we decide how long will it take before that happens, and we can actually make a statement. And then the decision and the outcome of that question is usually a date tied to, okay, we have to be reaching out to this many people before we can make a statement, and this much time needs to have passed. And then the only thing you have to do is you hold yourself to that date. The point of setting it in advance is to stop you from picking a moment that flatters the campaign. For us internally, depending of course per customer and per product it's about, we usually look at anywhere between 60 to 90 days before the conversion actually happened. Now, the piece that changes the whole readout: do not contact everyone. If you contact everyone that fits your target, you can count how many converted, but you cannot say what your outbound added, because some of those accounts were going to convert anyway. In most businesses, cold email is not the only kind of marketing they're doing, so you have to be specific about this. Maybe these accounts were already looking, maybe they found you through something else, maybe the timing was simply right. Without a comparison, every one of those conversions gets quietly credited to the campaign, and the number will look good, but you have learned nothing you can actually rely on. So keep a holdout group, a comparable set of accounts you deliberately do not touch. I made a complete separate video on this. I'll try to make sure you can see it on screen now on like how we do this and how we measure this, but the holdout is maybe the most important part about this. We keep that at 10%, that's a reasonable point. And the work this does here is making it comparable. A holdout only helps if it generally looks like the group you contacted. That means the same segment definitions, the same filters and the same data source, the same time window. And selected at random, not the account left over at the end of the list or the ones you could not enrich. You couldn't find the email address for, the email wasn't valid. Actually, the people that otherwise would have gone straight into the campaign. And that matters more than it looks. If your holdout is whatever was at the bottom of the list or couldn't be enriched, it is probably different in some way you cannot see. There's probably a reason the email wasn't valid or you couldn't find it that sets them apart of everyone you'll actually reach out to. Therefore, it's not a true statement after comparison. And your comparison statement will be based on that difference as well, which makes it not fair anymore. And in practice, this is easier than it sounds. If you build a list in one place, and we build ours in Get Leads, or with our own map scraper, depending on the kind of data we want to get. If you want to get unlimited contact data of people at companies, then you use Get Leads. If you want unlimited maps data, then you use our map scraper. Both links are in the description. But in both cases, you will have to use a holdout from that same source always. Every contact that gets loaded up in the campaign, 1 out of every 10 gets holded apart. So what we do is we pull the list once and then we break it apart during fill up. Same source, same files, same filters, everything. Now the objection I hear basically all the time, and it is a fair one, we cannot afford to hold back 10%. That's 10% of our pipeline. Now it's true, it will cost you some reach, but look at what you're getting back for it. You'll be way better at determining if a campaign actually worked or not. Again, based on whatever you're measuring, conversions, signups, whatever. I would even want to argue that it's more expensive to actually reach out to that 10% than to not reach out to that 10%. Because you might scale something that's not working, or you might stop something that is actually working because you didn't want to exclude the 10%. And if you're still doubting between specific segments, that's when the holdout works even better. And once you've done the testing phase and you know, okay, this is proven to work, this is the uplift it creates, you compared it to a decent set, like we emailed 1 million people, these 100,000 people, and we see, okay, the 1 million we emailed converted significantly higher, it's this much percent, okay, then contact the other 100,000 as well. But during the testing phase, you want to do the holdout. And then one more thing that is pretty painful sometimes, I've experienced it myself, it sucks, is that sometimes the holdout proves it didn't work. And that's a fair statement. It's fine if it didn't work. That's what the holdout is for. We communicate this with our customers. We let them know that we're doing that to make sure that they know, okay, after X period, again, you set the period up front, we'll be able to determine, okay, it worked or it didn't, based on the holdout. So if it did work, that's great. And then you can email the holdout as well. If it didn't work, then that's a fair end of the test. And there's one more thing that hides the lesson. Rating everything blended together. A single overall number can flatten two opposite results into something that looks mediocre. One buyer segment converts and the other one doesn't. Averaged, you get a shrug. And the shrug usually leads to let's tweak the copy, when the real answer was sitting in the targeting the whole time. So decide your segment before you launch, write them down. That way you know the industry, the company size, the role, the market, like everything. And if you want to test multiple, you do that in separate campaigns. And afterwards you bring that back to this conversion came from that campaign, that conversion came from that campaign, and that way you can tell which segment works better. Doing this correctly, we're able to say, okay, this segment converts online significantly higher than a completely different segment. Blended all together, that becomes very hard. And you want to keep the number of segments small. You don't want to test 50 different segments because then every email list you'll reach out to will become very small. You want to focus on larger segments that have decent differences between the companies, so it actually gives you useful information. If you know that one list of 1,000 people is a great segment, it still caps everything. So you want to create clear segments that give you useful information and not create a different segment per industry. For this, of course, it also applies that you want to decide this before you run the campaign, not afterwards. You do this before you start. So now we'll talk about, to be clear, what are replies for? Because I am not arguing that replies don't matter. They matter a lot, actually. They are the answer to a completely different question than did this campaign work. Conversions tell you if the campaign worked. Replies will tell you why the campaign worked or why your copy worked or didn't work. Have Claude or Codex run through all the replies that came in and point out something specific about the company. An objection you haven't handled, a fit problem based on the targeting, or an offer that's just not clear enough for people to buy right away. And then lastly, like the most important one, the one we see most, is missing trust. If we run a campaign and we figure out that the campaign is not working, we look at the replies, what we see back a lot is that trust is an issue. So for this to convert online, it's very important that trust is established and social proof is clear. And you can only establish this by reading the replies that you get back in from a campaign. So reply quality and quality based on the information it gives you is like a serious thing. So trust me, look at the replies you get in, analyze them with Cloud Code or Codex. It will help you a bunch. With that, you also know, by the way, that if targeting is an issue and people respond, but they respond negatively and give you objections that mean that targeting is wrong, then you go back to get leads or the map scraper or whatever, and you re-extract a better list that fits whatever you're trying to sell better based on the input you've got from the market. So it's very important to listen to the market, and the fastest way to do that is to look at your replies. One last thing, and then I'll drop this because I think this is so massively important. If you don't look at your replies and you think this campaign is not working because they're not responding, you might try to change the copy while targeting is a problem, or the other way around. You change targeting while copy is the problem. You want to establish what's going on based on the responses that come in, the quality of responses. So practically, before a campaign goes live, this is what we want to have written down. First, the online action, named specifically, where that action is recorded and who owns that system. How the converting accounts ties back to the contacted accounts, how that process works. The reading date, based on how long the action usually takes to be taken by a prospect. The holdout, the percentage, size, is it randomized, that has to be fully written. The segment split, if any, decided in advance. And the sentence the test is supposed to answer. The question you're asking. Does cold email work? Narrow it down further. Does cold email work to convert local businesses online to buy promo? That's a question. You write this down before you start. And if you're unable to fit this into one line, then that means there's something wrong with your test, not with trying to fit it into a line. So, and before I summarize that, there's some honesty about the limits here, because I do not want this to sound like tidier than it is. Attribution to an online conversion is not always clean. Longer consideration windows makes it way harder. Buyers move between devices, between people, and between channels, forwarding emails and everything. So there's a lot of stuff you simply cannot see. A holdout answers this question very clear. And to be fair, we built an entire system for this internally to have a pixel on the customer's website, track exactly who clicked, and the whole thing in between. Nevertheless, it's still very, very hard at this point. Working with a holdout proves it on its own. Aside from retargeting campaigns or lookalike audience of people that clicked, aside from that, the holdout proves everything in an instance. So that's where the holdout is most important. And on top of that, if you do segments, the smaller you make it, the harder it is to actually read into the data. Is the 1,000 emails then converted just a lucky shot, or is it actual data and can we replicate it? Well, you can't replicate it because the entire market is 1,000. So that's the issues you'll find here and what makes it harder. So converting people online from a cold email even with good tracking is very hard and is very specific work. So here's the takeaway. And this is the whole video in one action. Before you launch, write down the exact sentence the test is supposed to answer. The question, something like, can we drive incremental first orders from business buyers in this segment compared to the holdout group? Look at how much that sentence decides just from the get-go. It names the action, it names the standard, the incremental part, it names the population, who you're reaching out to, business buyer in this specific segment, and it names the comparison, the holdout group, which means it also tells you what to instrument, who to hold back, how to split the read, and what results would count as a yes. And if you cannot write that sentence yet, the campaign is probably not ready to launch yet. It usually just means the action is not measurable yet. And it's fixable. It's something like you can fix that part. So it makes it much easier for yourself to fix it before you go live. And if you want to know if it's possible for your company to convert people online on your web shop, on your software company, whatever, you want to convert them online, then feel free to click the link below, book a call with someone of my team, and then we'll look into your funnel and see if our email systems can help you to convert.